Hey guys, hope y'all doing good today. Just gonna give it a few minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. Yo, what's going on, Snifted? Good to see you here. Just gonna give it another couple minutes and then we'll go and get started. Hey, what's going on, Ed? Good to see you here. Snifted says, CD, did you survive last week? The market was pretty rough. Yeah, it was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie, there was little blood. There was a little bit, but luckily it was in some hedge positions, so it didn't turn out too bad. But I mean, this goes to show, how much or how important it is to actually hedge your positions. I mean, that's first and foremost what everyone should be doing. And so, yeah, absolutely. No, it was pretty brutal, and we'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about everything that happened over the past week, and we'll definitely get into it. Hootie, what's going on? Good to see you. Amern, good to see you. I've been telling you for months. Exactly. No, we did have the big drop, and similar to 2022, which a lot of people were looking at. We'll go over that and exactly what targets we're looking for the downside. So Amern says, told you guys BTC, silver, and gold. Yeah, very overheated. Gold and silver were very overheated, and they had that big pullback. And so potentially now we could be looking at potential long, but we'll talk about that as well and see exactly what's going on. But without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So looking at the past 24 hours of liquidations, we have 764 million. Longs being 487 million of that, and then shorts 276 million. Now, the big thing with this is we did have that $2.5 billion liquidations over the weekend. So the big thing to keep in mind with that is usually that does mark a local bottom within 1 to 3 days. Okay, we had a little bounce today. A big reason for that is because they get a lot of liquidity tagging to the downside, and so there's not that much afterwards. But considering as we're in this bear market right now, then this could be potentially further pullback. So necessarily that liquidation, correlation may not be as accurate as in the past. But nonetheless, I do think we are in for a couple days of upside before potentially continuing in the downtrend. What's going on, Maximilian? Sparacos, good to see you here. Unknown, good to see you here. Unknown, I will be there for token 2049, so definitely stay tuned for that. So looking forward to seeing you guys there. Now, for the liquidation heat map, so let's go ahead and look at the 24-hour here. We had a lot of liquidity that was tagged to the downside. Now we can see here that potentially we're pulling back to tag this 78.2K and then potentially even get down here to 77K before reversing up to this 80K liquidation level. But as you can see, I mean, really it's just we're staying within this range. And if you look at the 1 week, there is some liquidity higher near this 84.8K level. So like I said, there's not as much to the downside, but I do assume that we may get up to this 84.8, but first we'll have to look at this 80K level because it will be some big resistance, which we will cover as well. But yeah, there is just a lot of uncertainty in the market, and we'll talk exactly why we had the big drop and the reasons that could give us a push for higher this week. So first, looking at the news. Okay, now the big news items that I want to talk about, which was the reason for this drop, and it was a little bit of a delayed reaction as well, but President Trump officially selecting Kevin Warsh as his new Federal Reserve chair. Now, I know what people are thinking. They're thinking, well, he's selecting a new Fed chair. Shouldn't that be bullish, right? Whoever he selects is going to obviously cut rates as much as he wants, etc. Well, yes and no. So Kevin Warsh, he most likely will cut rates more than Jerome Powell. But the big thing that people are bearish on with him is he's very hawkish towards inflation, and he does not like quantitative easing. Now, for those who remember, quantitative easing, whenever that starts, that is historically the start of alt season, quote unquote, because you have a huge injection of liquidity into the market, basically artificially propping up the market. So if we're not going to get quantitative easing, well, that is a signal everyone, well, let's get more risk off, right? And so while yes, interest rate cuts are good, they're really not the big reason for the pump. Monetary policy is, and that's where you have quantitative easing and other liquidity injection measures that do aid in the market pumping. And so with that said, I mean, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Be careful what you wish for, because we all want Jerome Powell out, but at the same time, the guy who's replacing him may be worse. And I know that's hard to believe because Trump picked him, and why would Trump pick someone that's not good for the market, etc. So that's just something to keep in mind, is this. Now, also, we do have the government shutdown, okay? So this was another big event. So here you can see the government officially entered a partial shutdown, which began midnight, January 31st. And a reason for this is because they could not come to an agreement on the spending bill, right? There was a lot of push and pull between the Democrats and Republicans. They couldn't come to an agreement. And so now what happens is today, the House is actually going to weigh in on the spending bill because the Senate already approved it, but the House now is going to have their say. And if they agree to the terms in the spending bill, then we could see the government shutdown ending by tomorrow, okay? And Speaker Johnson says he's confident that the partial government shutdown will end by tomorrow. So that's also something interesting to keep in mind. Now, if you look at the poly market for how long will the government shutdown last, you have 4 days, 99%, obviously, 5 days, 56%. So now this is saying, okay, could we potentially last, later than tomorrow? And so that's also on people's minds. And then 6 days and then a week would be 14%. So this is a good sign. At least only 14% that will last longer than a week. Now, it may not be a bad bet, right? You're betting that the government shutdown is going to last longer than a week. At that point, you're maybe hedging with your maybe longs. If it doesn't, I mean, there's just some plays you could make here. But nonetheless, this is just something to keep in mind. I'm curious if you guys think the government's going to reopen tomorrow. Very curious, because I know a lot of people are thinking that's very possible, but you know how the government could be. So it's just, one of those things where it may not happen. So let's see, Snifted says, I won't long until there's a clear signal. Never try to catch a falling knife. Okay. Demir says, what about KTA? So I am not Luke. My name is John Luke. Separate person, different people, may sound similar, but I will look at KTA and I'll give you my analysis on it. CryptoData is my alias, by the way. For anyone that is not following me at the CryptoData, I'll post it in the chat as well. This is who is speaking currently. So again, Alpha Caller and Gem Hunters, and I do these live streams as well. So make sure you guys follow me, check it out. Post a lot of good stuff in here. But besides the presidential nominee for the Federal Reserve Chair, what are the other reasons? Okay, well, we have the government shutdown, another one. And there's also some Iran-US drama as well, right? Because you still have tensions going on with that. Also, you still have tariffs. And luckily, some of the tariff situation has actually subsided, where you have India and the US coming to an agreement to reduce tariffs. So that's a good sign, right? So we're seeing some positivity in the market. And so now you're like, okay, the government, or I should say, the market hates uncertainty. So now that we're getting more clarity with these tariffs and potentially a reopening of the government, that's also providing some tailwind for the recent moves that we're seeing today. But we'll go more into it. And Lahelis, we will talk about let's see, if we're technically in a bear market, he says, why is everyone looking for longs? So no, I mean, this isn't the time to try to go swing long here, but for those, there's always going to be scalping for those who want to scalp longs. And so yes, if you're in a bear market, then technically you just want to look for shorts. That'd be more advantageous risk reward wise, but there is still opportunity for scalp longs, especially like you're seeing Ethereum, nearly a 10% move today to the upside. So again, it's riskier to take longs, but if you have all of your indicators and SR lines in confluence with a macro view, then technically it is a good scalp. So there's always decisions both positive and negative with the market. Now, Let's look at the TradFi space. So the S&P up to 69.90, guys. This S&P is just grinding higher. And the RSI you can see on the weekly is grinding above this signal line, right? So we're showing some more upward momentum. So very bullish here for the S&P. As long as we can close the weekly above 68.80, remain bullish for higher. I do know some people are looking for tops near 71 to 7,200. It's very possible we could see that. But again, we're just going to have to play it day by day and see exactly what happens there. Now, for gold, gold is another one. So potentially looking for some longs at 45.40, if not 4,300, and the major support would be 4,000 for gold. Because at the end of the day, gold is a hedge against inflation, a hedge against uncertainty. And so if there is still uncertainty in the market, gold should catch a rebound. Now, a lot of people are asking, why did gold rise to 5,600? Why did gold go from, let's call it 4,300 at the beginning of the month to above 5,600 by the end of the month? Like, why did gold just rise, over 30%, 40%? Well, a big reason for that, so China was purchasing a lot of silver, and I do know potentially they may have been adding gold as well, because rumors are that there was a British company that was ready to redeem their gold from Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia didn't have the physical gold available, so then Saudi Arabia had to buy it from China. Again, I know that's a crazy rumor, but I think that was a lot of the reasons why we saw this artificial pump in gold. I mean, there were a lot of countries buying it. Like, it wasn't just retail buying gold because the market's so uncertain. Like, there were countries stockpiling gold and silver. And so I think that's a big reason. If anyone else has any other evidence of what was going on, I think that would be, advantageous. Feel free to share that in the chat. But yeah, a lot of countries are buying this. So it was definitely artificially propped up from that. Maybe for other reasons. I know that China is trying to make the yuan a global reserve currency similar to the US dollar and potentially Bitcoin. And so that's also something where you can see China stockpiling a lot of precious metals. And so again, there's just a lot of buy pressure and a lot of hype. And I mean, hopefully some of you guys made some profit on that. But this pullback was pretty violent because we finally had that unwinding, especially just looking, naturally at the indicators here, double top on the RSI, bearish divergence. Pattern playing out fully here. So at least it's reset below overbought. So potentially we could see some opportunity moving forward with gold. Now, oil futures still in this downward channel, right? Not rushing to buy oil futures yet, waiting for it to show some strength. And then you do have the dollar also rising, which is very, very odd to see the dollar and the stock market rise at the same time. Usually they're inversely correlated. So the fact that they're both rising in addition to crypto, that just tells you the state of the economy, right? The state of the market. It's just very disjointed. There's not a lot of correlation going on. And so let's see what happens for the next few days, few weeks. The big thing right now is the government shutdown ending. So let's see what happens today and what the House decides. But the RSI still has a lot of room to go here. So watching that closely. Now, looking at a few questions here. Do you think that the Epstein files had impact? Great question, Snifted. Great question, because the Epstein files was a big topic over the past few days. I know that there's some meme coins with Epstein as well. And that begs a good question, because if I'm correct, was it over 3 million files were released, right? The rest of the files were released, over 3 million documents. And so a lot of people were talking about that. And so I think that could play a part. And there's all kinds of conspiracies. Oh, they crashed the market to take away attention from the Epstein files. Crazy things always happen when the Epstein files come out. It's possible, right? I've seen that happen as well. I've seen them talk about UFOs whenever the Epstein files are coming out. Like, I'm sure you guys have noticed that. Crazy stuff happens around the Epstein file release. And so I do think that could play a part, right? I also think that we were really overextended to the upside. And a lot of people I know, especially in this chat, were calling for lower on Bitcoin. And so it's not out of the question that this was just a natural occurrence. Yes, Epstein files could play a small part in it. But I don't think it was the main reason. But I do think that there was probably some correlation there. I could see a little bit. Let's see. Tomb says, CD, am I crazy or what? But BTC has been in a pattern where it pumps in the beginning of the week and dumps at the end of the week for the past month. We'll look at that. We'll look at that, Tomb. And that's good that you identify that pattern, because a lot of times there'll be patterns such as, okay, Bitcoin always dumps on Tuesday or always pumps on Wednesday, right? And so if those have been correlated and those have been accurate in the past, then that could be a type of strategy that you use. And so it's all about backtesting your strategy. Is it statistically significant? Does it win more than it loses? And then what's the percentage of wins versus loss? So again, you got to look at that as well. And if that's a strategy that you're looking at, then you could very well play that. So I do know though, there's a lot of volatility Monday and Tuesday. So I don't know if it always pumps in the beginning and then dumps at the end, but in general, yeah, I do know that there definitely is some patterns in the market. Absolutely. Maximilian says it's no bear until the low of 74K is broken and confirmed. And we'll talk about that as well, Maximilian. Absolutely. We'll talk about those major support levels here. Darian says, what's up, Mr. Data? It's been a minute since I've been in the live stream, but I've been keeping up with your daily updates. Hey, appreciate that, Darian. Much love. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed my market updates. I try to give you guys as much info as I can. They're very comprehensive. They do take me a while to make, but I want to make sure you guys have a full picture of what's going on in the market, not just a few snippets. So you know exactly why the market's dropping, what levels you need to watch, and what your strategy needs to be moving forward, because more information you have, then the more you can make decisions based off of that information, not just guessing. And so again, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Punjab says, God bless you. Hey, God bless you as well, Punjab. Tonistic Productions was 74 the bottom. You know, 74 was the previous all-time high, I believe, now at support. So we'll talk about that as well. What's going on? What's going on, motivational speaker? Good to see you here. Harsh says, hey, mate, how you been? It's been a tough week. What do you think about entry into BTC Eat So Long? So we'll go over TA for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana very soon. So stay tuned. Going to be about 5-10 minutes. We'll go over that. But first, looking at the market here. So Bitcoin's at 78.5K, up 1.1%. Ethereum's up to 2345, up 0.4%. Solana up 1.6% to 104.36. Now, look at the top gainers, guys. Canton, this token has been a top gainer for a long time. I like every time I look at this token, it's near the top gainer. And so, I mean, the past 7 days, the data is there, right? Up 26%. The only other token that could stand close to Canton right now is Hyperliquid. Hyperliquid makes money on liquidations. They use that money to buy back the token. So it's a flywheel that keeps going. That's why Hyperliquid is such a good hedge, okay? And so when you have a token that's consistently outperforming, I mean, you got to include it in your portfolio. You have to, especially because they did add trading for commodities. And so that addition has also helped bring volume to their platform where they're generating fees and then buying back the token, you see? And so Hyperliquid is a token that I would say, in addition to having Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, have some Hyperliquid, right? And you can even substitute Hyperliquid for one of those if you don't want to hold Ethereum or Solana. But Hyperliquid is definitely a good one. Now, Canton as well. Research this token. I believe NASDAQ is actually invested in it, or a popular TradFi company. So go and check that out. A lot of opportunity with that. And then BitTensor, with the way AI is going, and then with Claude and all these different AI agents, like BitTensor may not be a bad bet. It's at 200 now, so it's dropped quite a lot. But let's see how that level holds at the same time. Now, also looking at the Fear and Greed Index. So anyone who knows me knows I like to look at everything. I like to look at the big picture, not just liquidity levels, not just support and resistance or indicators. I like to look at Fear and Greed Index sentiment, because I do believe that sentiment plays a large part, because humans are emotional creatures. They are very reactive. They're not proactive. They sell whenever it's a down market. They buy whenever it's an up market. They FOMO in, right? So they're predictable. And so when you have a 15 extreme fear, this was actually earlier today that we had this. I said, okay, now it's a good time to DCA. If you check my market update, I said, could be a potential good time to start DCAing because we are in extreme fear. And lo and behold, we had a bounce today. So at the very least, I would say DCAing right now is not bad. Don't invest everything, DCAing, because technically, we are in a bear market. And so now you're just really looking for those, if you want to scalp long, or just look for those good reward opportunities if you are considering holding long term. These are the times when you want to consider that. And so when everything else lines up, then this is just icing on the cake. So yeah, right now I would expect this to be in extreme fear, probably for a few more days, especially if the government remains shut down. So that's just something I'll be watching as well. But I do assume that potentially we could spike up into fear as everyone's getting more bullish right now, but potentially we could end up dropping back down. So keeping an eye on that. And then also for ETF flows, what's going to happen here, right? For Bitcoin, we had nearly $1.3 billion of inflows or outflows Thursday and Friday. That usually marks a bottom within 1 to 3 days. So I'm assuming we'll have some inflows today. Now, Ethereum, same thing, okay? Ethereum only had, let's say, 400 million of outflows. Still big for Ethereum because it's a lot smaller as far as volume-wise versus Bitcoin. So let's see if Ethereum does have some flows. I do suspect maybe we'll have a little bit of positive inflows. That is also a gauge of sentiment in institutions and client funds. If they do feel more confident, want to invest, then in that case, you will see a lot more inflow. So let's see what happens this week with that. Now, talking about the markets, okay? So this is Bitcoin. And after I look at Bitcoin, I'll go to some questions, and then I'll cover Ethereum, Solana, and KTA. So Bitcoin closed the weekly below 78K. Why is that significant? Well, that was a major support level March 31st of last year. When it's closing below it, it tells you the trend is still down, right? And they say the trend is your friend. Also, this pattern I want to show everyone. On the daily, we had bear flags, okay? And I'll draw a bear flag. It just looks like this. So you have a flagpole, you have an uptrend, which is the flag, and then you break down and continue lower. Just like if you have a bull flag, then you have a flagpole to the upside, and then you have, let me get here, and then you have, right? You have the flag, so potentially that, and then you have a breakout retest and higher. Okay, so this is a bull flag, this is a bear flag, basically the opposite. Now if you look at this pattern here. Flagpole, uptrend, breakdown. Okay, and then flagpole, uptrend, breakdown. Now, again, this one isn't picture perfect. The one that I drew here, this one isn't picture perfect, okay? But nonetheless, you still have a downtrend, an uptrend that breaks down, retests, and declines lower. So you can see these bear flags playing out. And right now, what I'm watching for is at the very least, a daily close above 78K, at the very least. What I would love to see is a weekly close back above 78K, because that would be very bullish. I mean, in that case, we'd have a bullish divergence on the stock RSI, make higher lows as price made lower lows. And then potentially we could see a push up to 84.5K before lower. But this is the big thing, watching that 78K level. So the thing I do love here is the RSI on the weekly was nearly oversold. Stock RSI is oversold. So that does give us some room back to the upside. If you look at the daily, they were way oversold. Everyone who knows me knows I love to buy when we're way oversold, okay? So now what we're seeing is a potential pump into now resistance of 80.6K, because where we wicked down on November 21st. And so if we can get above 80.6K, then I'll feel more confident we can actually retest 84.5, which I'm expecting a rejection here. Okay, if we get above 84.5, I mean, that could tell you that the market's ready to go higher again. But for now, I mean, this is such a big resistance at 84.5 that it would behoove you to actually at least head short when we get up here. But like I said, RSI, stock RSI still has a lot of room to go. So that's what I'd look for. Now, people were asking me, okay, what support level are you looking at? And I know someone mentioned 74K, right? Being the low, because we reached a low of 74.5. Now, if you look in the past, March of 2024, what was the high? It was, I mean, if I look actually here, the high was 73.9K. We nearly tapped that, okay? See this little wick up here? We nearly tapped it over here. And so, I mean, also, if you look at the wick, let me go ahead and have a dotted line. You can see this wick here that we had April 7th of last year. I mean, that was 74.4K, and we basically tagged that perfectly. So, I mean, that's not, not to say we couldn't drop here, but short term, this being a bottom, there is some argument for that. So if we do decline here and we close below on the weekly, then where would I be looking at? Well, I'll be looking at this range of 67 to 72K, because that is what is going to coincide with this major support where we bounced here October 21st of 2024. And it's very significant both ways. And so these are the levels I'll be watching, guys, especially with the 200 weekly EMA at 69K. I think there's a lot of support here. I think it would definitely be a good area to at least DCA down if we do get here. So that's what I would watch out for. And then 60K will be the next level, just because you can see it's a high in 2021, held as support November 2021 before breaking down. So that's another level I'm watching. So yeah, there is a lot of levels, but I just play this level by level. I'm not trying to predict where price is going to go. Are we in a bear market? I mean, yes, you could say we topped in October, so now we've just been in a bear market since. Where are we going to bottom out? That's the big question. I mean, we had a nice bounce at 74.5. Could that be the bottom? It very well could be. It very well could be. And so let's see what happens. Just like when 20K was the high and then we dropped and then we broke above it and bounced off of it afterwards, could be the same thing, right? Could be the same thing. So let's see what happens. Now, looking at a few comments. Let's see. Maximilian, your updates are great. I appreciate that, Maximilian. Lighter says, what do you think of CRV? Okay, I'll go over CRV in a minute. Do you think the big company in the US are afraid of Trump? This big company, do you think this big company are in the US? So big companies in the US? No. Trump is very pro-business. So I don't think any big companies are afraid of him. Even crypto companies, I don't think so. But I will say right now, they're working to pass the Clarity Act. the crypto market bill. And that's something that is taking some time. And that's something that eventually, hopefully they should do. But like I said, for now, they're just waiting to come to an agreement. I know that the banks really want to take control of crypto. And that's why Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, fell out for a bit and then rejoined the negotiations. So there's just a lot of push and pull with control for the Clarity Act. Let's see, lighter, I'll look at KTA in a minute. Samantha, very succinct and informational. I view them better than paid memberships. Thank you. Hey, appreciate that. Appreciate that. And that makes me feel good that you guys are enjoying the market updates and they're very informational. And like I said, I try to include as much as I can so that you all get the most information possible. So that makes me feel good. Afnonzel, I will check ETC as well. Floor John, do you expect February to be just chop between the 80 to 90K range? Most likely, Floor John, most likely. It may even be below that, honestly. We may go below 80K, and we may just chop around 67 to 72K, right? Form a little bottom pattern and then higher afterwards. That is very possible. I know people are looking for potential down moves until May, right? Kind of being a potential downward chop. And so we'll have to see what happens, but it's going to start with forming a bullish market structure, making higher lows before we can actually start getting confident again that, you know, we're in an uptrend. So versus breaking the current downtrend that we've been in. So let's see what happens with that. Snifted, do you think altcoins are dead right now? I feel like we will not see alt season anytime soon. You know, that it's not looking good, Snifted. And again, the whole argument for alt season was quantitative easing. And historically, whenever QT ended, quantitative tightening, quantitative easing started 3 to 6 months afterwards. But now, I mean, 6 months after QT ended would be June, right? May and June. So Jerome Powell's getting out. That's technically the time when he would have started QE. So it's not looking the best with Kevin Warsh being anti-QE. And that's a big reason we're seeing this drop that we're seeing. Toom says, do you think Bitcoin will close the CME gap it just formed at 77 to 84K? So let's check that out, Toom. Let's check out CME gap, and then we'll go over Ethereum, Solana, CRV, and KTA. So let's go ahead and check out, let's see, I believe it's BTC1 exclamation mark. Yeah, okay. So here's a CME gap. Let me go down here. Okay, yeah. So we had a big drop from, yeah, right there. So let me go ahead and draw a line real quick, just so we have a proper range of this CME gap. Okay, right there. Okay, so CME gap right now is between, that's 79.6 and 81.7, or yeah, 81.1 and 79.6. So could we fill this CME gap? Absolutely, absolutely. Especially seeing how 80K is such, you know, big resistance right now that we were talking about earlier. Absolutely, we could fill the CME gap and then continue lower. So definitely could see us doing that. And there is some liquidity in the 80K level. So yeah, it would make sense for us to potentially have a fake out where we continue higher and then continue lower from there. So that's something I'll look out for. So yeah, good point on that. Now let's go to, and for the record, these CME gaps, they either get filled within a few weeks or it ends up being a few months. And so usually they end up getting filled fairly quickly, but they don't have to get filled right away. But usually they get filled sooner rather than later. So let's see what happens with that. Looking at Ethereum. So let's go on the daily. Actually, let's go on the weekly here so you can see. So I posted this in the market updates as well. I said Ethereum looks better than Bitcoin because it is approaching its major supports. And its major support zone was between 2010 all the way up to 2190. I know that was a big range, but it was coming up into its support down here in June, right? Same level. And look how much we bounced. I mean, we literally bounced from 2190 all the way up to 2395. So that was a huge move for anyone that was placing some DCA longs down here. And so again, someone who's asking about why would you long in a bear market, you're just scalping here. So if you got the long from 2190 up to 2390, I mean, that's almost a 10% move, right? So, I mean, even on 5x leverage, it's a 50% move if you want to catch that. So there is still opportunity. Yes, it's going to be risky. Yes, you're catching a falling knife. And so that's why I, urge people against it. But nonetheless, I'm still going to present the opportunity if it's there. Because like I was saying with Bitcoin, on Ethereum, the daily RSI and stock RSI is oversold across into the upside. So this looks bullish, okay? Yes, we could still go lower, but this looks bullish, at least for the time being. And so now where's the resistance on Ethereum? 2370. Why 2370? Because we can see we bounced July 1st, 2025 at this 2370 level before going higher. And so I would still expect us to potentially reject off of here and go lower. And then if we break and close above it, then 2570. I only say 2570 because that was resistance May and June of last year. You can see how many times we rejected from 2570. So these are levels to watch, guys. Again, RSI is almost oversold on the weekly. Very bullish. You can see how much we've pulled back on the weekly indicators. That is a good sign. If we go to the monthly even, monthly, still looks a little bearish. But weekly, we are starting to get into some oversold territory. So I would just be careful. If you're longing on Ethereum and we do break below 2,000, then this trend line here that I drew recently, stemming from July 2022, you can see we bounced multiple times from it. This is a trend line I'm watching, which depending where we're at, coinciding between 1760 and 1830. I think it could be some really good support down here. So that's the next level I would be watching for a long. But let's go ahead and look at Solana. Solana, CRV, and KTA, and then I'll go ahead and look at the other questions afterwards. So Solana here, same thing as Bitcoin, right? So it closed below its weekly support of 103, and now it's trying to close back above it. So we still have 6 days to the weekly close, but similar as Ethereum, the RSI is almost oversold. Stock RSI was already oversold. So on the daily, both of those are oversold. So that's why we're seeing the bounce on basically everything, right? Momentum is shifting, exhausted to the downside, now curving back to the upside. Where would I look to take profits if I was in a Solana long right now? Well, I'll look at 112 because if you look in the past, the previous support, April 11th of last year, was 112 before it turned resistance. And so now that we crossed below it, I would expect it to at least be some resistance all the way up to 117. This is a range I'll look to take some profits. And then if we do close below 103 on the daily, I would look for 88. Okay, 88 would be the next big support level. If you look at the weekly chart, you can see that we bounced at the $88, $89 level January of 2024 and basically all of January. And so that's what I would watch for as the next area to long Solana. And then below that, I know a lot of people are watching this range, $70 to $76. This is a big area. You can see we wicked down to 76 February of 2022. And then we also bounced off of support at 70. So it's a very big range here, very big range, 70 to 76 for anyone that's looking to long Solana way lower. I think this would be a good, very, very good area risk reward wise. And then, like I said, if we do close the weekly below 103 again, 89 would be a better area to long. Let's look at KTA, and then we'll look at CRV, and then I'll look at some more questions. So KTA here. Well, I mean, the big thing for KTA, let me go ahead and draw some SR lines here on the daily. So we have, really KTA is a little bit harder to predict here, but you can see that we do have this range 23 cents to 25 cents. A good area to long for KTA. The stock RSI is oversold, but the RSI was not oversold on the daily. So it makes it a little bit harder to predict, okay? So when you're looking at this, these SR lines and indicators, the fact that it's not in confluence with the RSI being oversold as well, then that's something to watch out for. And so, yeah, it's also against its 50 EMA on the daily. And so it looks okay. If it can close the daily above 25 cents, be fairly bullish. If you look at the 4 hour is getting overbought on the stock RSI. So potentially it's rejecting here as well at the 200 EMA. So yeah, I would not be in a rush to buy KTA until the very least at 25 cents. And then below that, about 23 cents. So 23 to 25 cents for KTA for a range. I think 23 is the better risk reward here, especially considering the stock RSI being overbought like it is. We could potentially have some, bearish momentum, and the RSI isn't even oversold on the daily like it is with Bitcoin, Solana, and Ethereum. So yeah, a little bit worse structurally for KTA versus other tokens. But if we do cross above the 50 EMA, then I would look for 31 cents as a good take profit level, and then 34 cents after that. Then finally, CRV. Gonna check that out. So CRV, you can see here, it crossed below 33 cents and then it just died and went to a low of 26. And so where is the perfect level to long here? Well, let's look at the weekly, see if we get any clear levels here. So obviously if it gets down to 22.6 cents, that'd be a great level to long. I think right now, you could argue that we're seeing this resistance on the weekly here at 28 cents, turns support now. That is a possibility that we could see a bounce here. We do have a little bit of volume. So technically for CRV, it's not horrible, especially if you even see we have some type of little double bottom, if you want to call it that, on the stock RSI. But at least they're both oversold, the RSI and stock RSI. So that does give some good argument for potential bounce. If you aren't along on CRV, 33 cents is the next level I would take some profit at. If you do want to be patient, just in case we have another drop, then 23 cents I think would be a very, very good level risk reward wise for CRV. If you want to long within a range, I think between 20 to 23 cents would be a good area to DCA long, especially if you are low leverage. But again, just be careful, especially trying to knife catch this. But I mean, the weekly is obviously the low here is going to be the best risk reward wise. So that's what I would watch for CRV. Now let's go ahead and check out some other questions. Flora John says, Benjamin Cohen's expecting 2026 to be a red year. Do you think the same? It's possible, yes. And thank you for mentioning Benjamin Cohen. Let's bring up some of his charts because he is great at predicting a lot of the market. Okay, he has a ton of followers, but he's very accurate. That's why he has a lot of followers. So here he's saying Bitcoin is now testing the April 2025 lows, a critical level for this market. Losing this level would likely result in a quick drop to the 200 weekly SMA, which is at 60K. Remember, we talked about 60K earlier as well as being a very low support level that we would look at to bid. So like we mentioned, this 74.5 was the previous all-time highs in 2024. So let's see what happens. Let's see if we do end up bouncing here or not. But yes, it is a very significant level. We do need to hold this level. Now, also, Benjamin Cohen was saying that we will pull back to, obviously, at Q4 has been bearish of each year. Last year was no exception. But also, he did mention this. So he does have a lot of these support bands. And right now, it is looking like Bitcoin could reach this 60K SMA that he was talking about. So again, just based off of historical data, that's where we would bounce from. So 60K, if you guys are really, really trying to bottom ticket, that would be the level where Bitcoin should bounce if we do have a further drop. So keep it on that level. But yeah, I do agree, at least for the first half of this year, definitely going to be red. But the next half, I mean, it's not looking the best. The Fed chair, the new Fed chair, not wanting to start quantitative easing. So let's see if he makes any bullish comments. What I'm looking for is, one, for him to make some bullish comments about crypto. Two, for the government to reopen. I think those two catalysts would actually cause us to pump quite a bit. And so everyone's just waiting for that uncertainty to clear, waiting for some clarification from Kevin Warsh, the new Fed chair replacement in May from Jerome Powell, to make some bullish comments on crypto, and just waiting for some clarity on that, because right now it's not looking too good as far as liquidity injection for the economy. And, you know, he's very, very against inflation, obviously, and seen as hawkish in that sense. Nerdy Guy says, predict rugged. So the predict tools, the thing with that is, so I invested 2.5K in that one, so lost that. That was nice. But with that, they did have a actual product, but it turned out there was a couple big wallets that were selling, and then it created a cascade. And obviously, with everything else happening in the market, it didn't help. And that's when the team actually sold their allocation. I want to say near 350, 400K. Then it just completely rugged after that. And so it was just a lot of fear in the market. And unfortunately, with a lot of these tokens, it's very, very imperative to, one, only invest what you can afford to lose, first and foremost, right? With anything. And so with that, also having a stop loss in place is very, very important, guys. I don't care what you're invested in, have a stop loss in place, because if a token drops from 5 million market cap down to 0, like, it's not going to help you. But if you have a stop loss at 3 mil, 4 mil, yes, you'll be saved by that rug, okay? So that's just something I have to also add, is with any token, no matter how bullish it is, even hyper liquid, you got to have a stop loss. Harsh says, bro, during this dump, do you have any token where we should buy at the current dip, which is strong, and you're considering investing, whether spot or low leverage, and we should watch for it? Good question. So I know I was talking about Hyperliquid being so strong. We can watch that. I mean, crazy bounce on Hyperliquid. Like, the performance here is very impressive, okay? Now, the daily, I mean, it's all basically looks like it wants to curve up a little bit more. It's still below its 200 daily EMA. But yeah, as far as a token that I want to buy, I wouldn't want to buy Hyperliquid right here. I would look for a drop, potentially down to $27 if it gives it. I think that'd be a good area to buy some Hyperliquid. As far as right now, I mean, Ethereum doesn't look too bad here, but again, it's right up against its resistance, 2370. I'd rather buy it near 2190 to 2260. That'd be my area to long it. Yeah, I mean, Canton has been crazy. Literally, it's up only, right? So I hate buying all-time highs. So I'd maybe say 16 cents with Canton if it gets there. But even so, I mean, look at the RSI and stock RSI. It's way overbought. So still at least some room to pull back. Yeah. So that's what I would watch for that. To answer your question, out of those, maybe Ethereum, maybe the closest right now. Peter Bem says, what do you think about BTC going down to the 200 EMA in nearly every previous bear cycle? Let's check that out. So let's see, go to the weekly. So yeah, so if we zoom out here, the pink line is the 200 EMA. And let's actually look at the Binance chart, because that's going to be a little different. It's going to have a little more history, or even, heck, we could even say the Coinbase chart. Okay, so yeah. So down here, you can see that right now 68K. So yeah, the Coinbase chart, you can see exactly it goes down to the 200 EMA, rejects, and then bounces off of it. So in that case, could we go a lot lower? I mean, that makes sense, right? Down to 60K and then go higher. If you look at the price data here, so the price range from when it crossed below the 200 EMA before making a bottom, that was 40%. So if we go 40% below the 200 EMA, I mean, that would be, 40% below would be 40K. That would be wild if we go down to 40K. But if we're saying it's going to be the same thing as 2022, which there's a lot of correlation there, I mean, 30 to 40K isn't out of the question. It really isn't. If we're saying 75% from the top and we're really trying to get that measured move down, 75% is going to be where I drew this, 30K. So that's why, if we're relating it to percentages, okay? Is that going to happen? Hard to say. But you just have to be ready for it. We're either going to bounce at 60K or we're going to bounce between 30 to 40. So it's going to be, I know a lot of people are looking for 55 because that's where we bounced here in August of 2024. So that's an area I'll add as well. But yeah, I mean, at least down to the 200 EMA, yes, that does make sense down to 68K. I could give you that. Absolutely. Tomb says, sorry to bother you, CD, but could you also please look at Link? Yeah, let's go and look at Link. No problem at all. Okay. Also, if you guys haven't liked the stream, definitely like it. That would be much appreciated, guys. Trying to spread this out to the masses, help people out here, and try to give people some clarity on what's going on in the market. So, yeah, so Link actually approached, you can see here back in August of 2022, its resistance of around $8.90 turned out to be support. So the $8.99. So Link isn't at a bad spot right now. And if we look at the indicators, similar to Bitcoin, RSI on the weekly isn't quite oversold, but the stock RSI is. The daily, I'm assuming both, yeah, both are way oversold on the daily. And so, yeah, Link doesn't look bad as far as a bottom bid. If you can get it near $9, that would be the best risk reward. But I mean, even right here where it's at 980, not the worst either. I would look at major resistance for Link at 1090. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Yeah, so you can see here, it wicked down to 1090 June 22nd of last year, and then also April of last year. So 1090 is, and I like to look at the most recent moves for looking at resistance versus going like all the way back and looking at this stuff, because this is where it tells you where the current demand is. So yeah, I would look at 1090 to take some profits and then look at 1150 afterwards. But closer you can get to $9, the better for a long on Link. I think that'd be best, especially risk reward wise, considering where we're at on the indicators as well. Tennessee Productions just opened a long on ETH at 2330. How do you see it going in the next 24 to 48 hours? Ooh, 24 to 48 hours. So, I mean, hard to say, right? Like, it's going to depend on the government shutdown stuff. So I don't think the House has voted on the government shutdown. I can double check. I'm not sure what time. Let me do House vote on Twitter. Let's see. No House vote scheduled for Monday on the funding package approved by the Senate last week. Partial deadline won't end until Tuesday at the earliest. Okay, there you go. Then I guess there is no House vote scheduled. And so I was mistaken. So Tuesday we're going to know. So I think people are tentatively bullish. I know that Speaker Johnson said that the Senate or the government should reopen Tuesday. And so that's why potentially people are trying to front run this. And so, yeah, if that happens, if we do have the government reopening, then yes, we'll have a little bullish catalyst, and I could see Ethereum. I mean, I don't know if it'll get up to 2570. I don't think it'll get that high, but I could probably give you, I mean, I hate giving you too high of a target here, but yeah, potentially we could see 2470. I think 2470 would probably be a relatively good target if the government does reopen. If it doesn't, then expect Ethereum to go back lower and retest 2190. So again, it just all depends, right? Because the whole thing with trying to knife catch here or long after everything's pumped is there's still uncertainty. There's still uncertainty with the government shutdown, with Kevin Warsh's comments on crypto and QE, with the tariff situation, with the U.S., and Iran situation. I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty. So it's hard to say that like, oh, we're going to pump further tomorrow. We just don't know. If the government opens, we'll pump. If the government doesn't open, we'll dump. I mean, it's just pretty much it's black and white for now. So yeah, I would say if you have a long right now, maybe you could do a 4-hour close below 2150, but that's very far away. Yeah. I mean, it's just a kind of very precarious position right now with that long. So if you want to say a daily close below 2230, where we daily closed last time here in June of last year, you could do that depending on your leverage and how far that is away from you. But yeah, it's just kind of in the middle of no man's land right now. Snifted says, do you think the Fed will cut rates in the next meeting? I mean, let's go ahead and check Polymarket. Let's check Polymarket. So let's check for March. Right now, March, there is a 90% chance of no change. And I'll go ahead and link this so you guys can see it. Right now, there is a 90% chance of no change in March for the Fed cuts. So I'm probably going to say no. I'm probably going to say no, they're not going to cut rates. Unless there's some crazy development in the market where it's needed. It looks like right now it's no change, which could be another reason why the market's bearish, right? There's no cuts coming. Potentially not until maybe what April shows 76%. June shows a more likelihood. So June, remember, is when Kevin Warsh gets into office. He's still pro rate cut. And so that's probably why there's a higher chance there's going to be a rate cut in June. But yeah, for March and April, not looking the best. Not looking the best here. So just keep that in mind. That could also be another catalyst if they do end up cutting rates. Florigen says there's still money to be made on chain. Absolutely, there's still money to be made on chain. You've seen meme coins pump as much as they have. I mean, with what we had Penguin pump, we had Moltbook pump, we had, all the Molt tokens pump, we had Epstein pump. I mean, we had a lot of tokens. So there's still money to be made, even with on-chain, even with top tokens such as Hyperliquid, right? Longs on there, longs on Ethereum. Like, there's still money to be made, guys, but the biggest thing is being patient and waiting for your indicators and SR lines to line up. If you're not waiting for those to line up on the daily at least, then you're just gambling, because at that point you're just kind of betting between ranges. Maybe you're not, everything is based off of statistical probabilities. Algorithms are based off of probabilities. That's what they long when the RSI and stock RSI oversold and vice versa. And so if you play just like the algorithms are playing, then you can catch some of that tailwind. Tenistic Productions says I'm closing at break even then. Awesome. Yeah, that's the thing, Tenistic Productions, is when Ethereum is up against resistance like it is right now, that's the only thing I don't like is even if you look at the 4-hour, you can see support turn resistance, right? I just hate longing at resistance. I'd much rather long like at least near 2230 on the 4-hour. But you're seeing the 4-hour stock RSI starting to get overbought, getting a little bit closer. So yeah, that's the only thing. If you're going to long, I would put a long between maybe 2180 to 2220. Really, though, if you can get it near 2130 to 2190, that'd be a better long area. Give some time for the 4-hour to reset. Barry says, what do you think about the War token? The War token's actually really good. So I was in the War token. Right now, I actually have the chart open already. So the War token's 19 million. So I actually got into it at 12 million. I got into it here. And before it pumped all the way up to 29 million. And so I was in it from way, way back. And it's very strong. There's a lot of big KOLs in it, a lot of big influencers in it. So yeah. So I called it in my group, and it turned out to be fairly well. It turned out to be fairly good. And so I think that it has a lot of potential. There's still a lot of people pushing it, and there's a lot of, there's a good narrative behind it as well. And so there's more than meets the eye with a War token. So if you guys can get it near 12 mil, 10 to 12 mil would be a good entry. Any higher than that, a little bit risky, especially considering the overall market, but it is performing very, very well today. Absolutely. But looks like that's it, guys. If you aren't following me on X, definitely do so. Again, check out my post. I post a lot of info on the market. I post a lot of motivational content as well. So definitely follow me on there. And also, if you guys have any other questions, then feel free, again, to wait for my market updates. I will post those usually every day, and I'll try to keep you guys apprised of all the info. Right now, we're waiting for the government to reopen Tuesday, tomorrow. So just being patient for that to happen. But until then, trying to wait until your indicators and SR lines are in confluence. Look for those strong performers and betting on those versus holding losers as they continue down. So that's the biggest advice I can give you guys. And like I said, hope you all have a great rest of the week. Love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and talk to you next time. See ya.